You won't come into my apartment to serve my pizza? I'm calling the cops. My friend, Adam, was sharing stories and he had this gym. Back in the mid-90s, he was a young college student. This is before he met his wife, Belle. Because he was strapped for cash, he took a job as a server/cook/delivery driver for a mom-and-pop pizza restaurant. Most of the people he interacted were great, but then there was Karen. It's a weeknight during the final semester of his senior year, so it's pretty dead. A standard order for a large cheese pizza and breadsticks comes in. Because Adam is the only driver on duty that night, he gets sent to deliver to the Dragon Karen and her offspring. Adam arrives and immediately gets a strange feeling in his gut. The complex is run down and looks shady as hell. Just wanting to deliver and get out of there, he passed a CCTV camera and heads to the address. He hears the gaggle of children running around and screaming and hoped that it was a good sign. Surely, nobody would dare do anything stupid around their own children, right? He knocks on the door and our Karen answers. Looking over her shoulder, Adam can see that the apartment is small but clean and well kept. Well, as well kept as having a bunch of children running amok under your feet can cause. Hi, did you order a? Adam said. Karen grabs his arm and begins to pull him into the apartment. Finally, it's about time you got here. Adam wriggles his way out of her grasp and, backing up a couple of feet, says, Whoa, 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 back up. What are you doing? You're delivering my pizza, right? Karen said. Yeah? Adam said. You are going to serve us. I'm a single mother with 3 children, so I need all the help I can get. The strange feeling in Adam's gut got stronger. I'm afraid I need to get back to the restaurant. I'm the only driver on duty. They can wait. Now get in before the pizza gets cold. Karen reaches out her clawed hand to grab Adam. She looked at him like she was a hungry shark and Adam was a wounded seal. Adam drops the boxes and runs out of there, not wanting to get dragged by Karen into her den. She yells at him, Get back here. As he didn't have a cell phone, he rushes back and tells the owner what happened. The owner made sure Adam was okay and told him not to worry about it. Adam forgot about the experience until a couple of days later. He was busy cutting and boxing pizzas when the owner comes up and says, Adam, there's a couple of cops here to see you. A bit worried, Adam comes up and sees a couple of detectives, their badges visible. They introduce themselves and ask if they can speak. Adam says, sure, and they go to an unused booth. They ask if Adam had delivered pizza to a particular address a couple of days ago. Adam says, I did. Why? What's going on? The older of the two reveals that Karen had reported that Adam had tried to assault her children. Now Adam is really nervous. At the time, he was applying to be a police officer, a dream he's had since he was a little boy. He knew that any allegations of any type would be a black mark against him. The detective, apparently noticing Adam's nervousness, softens and asks, What happened, son? Adam told them about the delivery and how Karen had tried to drag him into the apartment to serve the pizzas to them, how he dropped the boxes and took off. He also told them that the owner knew about the situation. When he finished, the two detectives look at each other, nod, and then look back at Adam. Adam at this point is sweating bullets. The older detective smiles and says, You're okay, son. We know you're telling the truth. Adam gets confused, and that's when the detective explained. This wasn't Karen's first report to police about a delivery driver trying to assault her children. This, coupled with the inconsistencies in her story and the CCTV footage, catching the whole event made them suspicious. They just wanted to get Adam's version of events before proceeding to the next steps, whatever that would be. Adam told me he was glad he was sitting down because his knees gave out. The detectives got his contact information, thanked him for his time, and went on their way. Karen's name and address was added to the blacklist as a result of her little stunt. And now to the next story, Story 2. Entitled Boss Tries to Ban Calculators from the SAT. I'm a teacher in a small private school in the Caribbean. I am local. My family has been here for literally centuries, but my principal, whom I'll call P from now on, and vice principal, VP, are expats from the US of A, and neither of them really understands how to run a high school effectively. I'm not saying their nationality is the reason. I have worked with amazing teachers from around the world, US teachers in particular. It's just that for P, who's also the owner of the institution, the school was established as a pet project back in the 70s, so she'd have something to do while her husband was at work at his multi-million-dollar company. VP moved here about 10 years ago, but she's never been interested in assimilating into the local community, preferring to hang out in gated communities with other expats. She likes having a job she's not qualified for, as she has no training in educational management, and she relishes the fact that she got the VP position over qualified local teachers simply because her blonde hair, blue eyes, and Carolina accent remind P of her daughter. It's been hell working at this school because VP is a megalomaniac. She will tell you that the grass is purple, and when you try to correct her, no matter how kindly and knowledgeably, she will insist that the grass is purple and then make you paint the grass purple for her so she can prove she's right. The only reason I stay at this school is that I love my coworkers, the students are super sweet, and I'm the breadwinner of my household until hubby is done with university, but sometimes my VP is so fucking insane that I want to whack that mole with a kanabo. One of the best examples of this behavior was during my first year teaching at this school. I had only been a teacher for 2 years prior, but I'd had quite a bit of experience with national and international exams. I'd tutored the SAT since college, and I'd proctored several SAT sittings at my previous school. It's safe to say that I knew the exam pretty well, and I kept up to date with changes to make sure my kids were always ready. Now, I'll save the backstory for another post, because it's juicy. But during my first year, VP had an arch nemesis. To be honest, VP has an arch nemesis every year. It really is like some bad anime. My coworkers and I think VP targets someone every season to use as a scapegoat/sacrifice for her ineptitude. She blames all the school's problems, which are usually 75% VP's fault, on that single person so that she can convince P to fire them and claim that all the school's problems have been exorcised with that teacher. But this particular teacher was a hurricane. Long story short, this math teacher, MT, was crazy, but she was a great counter to VP's insanity. They got into fights all the time, and one of the stupidest fights was over calculators for the SAT. Our school had just been certified as an SAT center, and we were going to have our first SAT sitting, but VP honestly believed that our school was going to be the first school ever in my country to host the SATs. Never mind that several coworkers and I had taken SATs and APs in high school here in my home country. VP told P that she was single-handedly introducing College Board to this country, and in P's eyes, everything VP said was gospel truth. VP was extremely nervous about hosting the SAT. She was anxious that representatives from College Board would waltz in during the exam and find something out of order that would get our center shut down. She ignored advice from seasoned SAT proctors because they weren't American. So how would they know anything about an American exam? Because VP was so nervous and completely moronic, she somehow misread the SAT manual. Hence, the following drama ensued. 2 days before the first SAT sitting at our school, MT barges into my classroom during one of my planning periods, steam pouring out of her ears. Behind her is a crowd of 11th graders, wailing and yelling. That bitch has lost her mind, OP. Horrified by MT's language in front of our students, I race to my door, usher MT in, and shut out the kids. I ask her what's wrong. Apparently, VP showed up during MT's class with 11th grade, who were all signed up to take the SAT that Saturday, and announced that no calculators were allowed in the examination room. She claimed that after thoroughly reading the SAT manual, it was clear that the SAT did not require calculators and, thus, if any student were to bring a calculator to the exam on Saturday, VP would expel them from the center. I was stunned. I'd been tutoring the SAT for some time, and while I didn't tutor math, I knew that there was an entire section of the SAT that required a calculator. However, I also knew that just a few weeks prior to this debacle, VP and MT had gotten into a huge argument about calculators. According to VP, MT was teaching our high school students to rely too heavily on calculators, which was a sign that MT wasn't qualified to teach math. It was obvious that banning calculators from the SAT exam was not a mandate from College Board, but rather a poorly understood at best and insidious at worst ploy to validate VP's disapproval of MT. MT demands I talk some reason into VP. While I ain't no fan of MT, I'm worried about our students. It was their examination that was being jeopardized by the petty feud between VP and MT. However, I'd had enough experience with VP to know that, in this situation, the grass was purple, and no amount of arguing was going to convince her otherwise. The woman is like a rhino. When she runs full force forward. So, I decide to go straight to the headwoman, P, but before I do, I print off an up-to-date copy of the SAT manual straight from College Board's official website and read over the calculator rules just to make sure. Can you believe it? Calculators were allowed. I shove the manual in a folder and walk over to the administrative office. I arrive at P's office and ask our secretary if P has time to speak to me privately. Unfortunately, VP just so happens to be in the vicinity, and before I can even take a seat on P's couch, VP enters P's office and takes a seat across from me. P, of course, sees nothing suspicious about this and asks me to explain what was so urgent that I had to meet with her so abruptly. I can tell VP knows. She's got this weird coy smirk on her face, but I ignore the desire to scrub it off with acid. I explain to P the situation, how there's been a misunderstanding about the use of calculators in the SAT exam, how our registered students are scared and confused about the banning of calculators, how it is absolutely fine and probably necessary for students to use a calculator for a certain section of the math test. I see P's laptop on the couch, and forgetting my print copy in my folder, I ask P if I can use it to show VP the up-to-date SAT manual. At this point, I don't want to shame VP. Shaming her would only cause more strife, as she is a vengeful woman. I place the laptop in VP's lap and show her the rules about calculators, how there's a list of dozens of accepted calculators for the exam. VP lets out this disgusting half-sigh, half-croaking noise she makes when she realizes she's wrong or has done something stupid. Then, I reach for the laptop so that I can show the manual to P. Y'all, before I can take the laptop, VP presses the power button and shuts the laptop down cold. Then, she casually closes the top panel and lays the laptop on the couch farthest away from P. She tells P that I've only confirmed what she already knew, that calculators are not allowed in the SAT room. People, I couldn't feel my body. It was like my flesh had turned into TV static. How could VP blatantly lie like this? The proof was right there. Of course, P believes VP entirely. P tells me that under no circumstances are calculators allowed on campus during the SAT because, as VP has already told her, if a representative from College Board shows up and sees a calculator, our center will be shut down. P is even considering banning calculators from campus indefinitely. I mean, who needs them, right? Not trigonometry, geometry, and calculus students. It was at that moment that I remember that I have a copy of the SAT manual in the folder on my lap. Just as casually as VP had been with the laptop, I take out the printed manual, turn to the page on calculators, get nice and cozy in the seat next to P, and read the manual next to her with my finger on each word, explaining everything I'd said about calculators. I also turned to the front cover to show her the year this manual was issued, that very season. P is amazed. Oh, VP. Calculators are allowed. The manual you were looking at must have been old. Y'all, I know that was bullshit. I know P is just as insane as VP, but I didn't correct P. You may disagree with my inaction, and so does my heart, but I had just won a major battle. I was drained by having to prove the truth was the truth and facts were facts. At that point, I only cared about my students. VP glares at me with the fakest smile and says how happy she is I had a printed, updated copy of the SAT manual to show them before the exam. It's been a few years since this happened. I wish I could say that VP is no longer with us, but sadly, she's still here causing chaos. MT was fired that June. VP is as resilient as a cockroach and eats P's shit like chocolate cake. So I've had to learn how to deal with her until I can make the next step in my career. However, this story does have a happy ending. My students were able to bring their calculators to the exam during that first sitting without a hitch. I made sure of it, as I was the admissions officer that Saturday. VP has never pushed her argument further either. It's hard, I suppose, to refute cold, hard facts, but what's funny is that whenever VP and I discuss me proctoring the next SAT exam, she reminds me of that hilarious time MT tried to get calculators banned from the SAT, y'all. I nearly fainted the first time VP said this, and she was so confident. Laughs like it was a quirky mistake that some idiot made. I usually tell her how I remember the incident rather differently than she does, and every once in a while when I'm feeling randy, I go so far as to say, "Wasn't that you?" It feels good to see VP's face turn into a beat. And now to the last story. The worst coworker my mother ever had. From the 90s to the mid-2000s, my mother had an awful coworker called Winnie. This woman was short and round with short hair and big glasses. And she was just plain bad. And what really sucked was that they could not get rid of her. And yeah, she was definitely a Karen. Winnie had almost as much seniority in the company as my mother. But her work performance was mediocre at best. And she loved to gossip to anyone who'd listen to her in the office. Yet would act like a complete diva anytime anyone called her out on her behavior. She wasn't stupid, just a crappy person. And speaking of crap, her most annoying trait was her bathroom preference. She had a poor diet of junk foods that left her bowels in near constant turmoil. And for whatever reason, she always went out of her way not to use the bathroom that was on her work floor. Instead, she'd take the elevator up one level to my mother's work floor and use the bathroom there. There was no particular reason she did this other than to annoy people. The bathrooms on both floors were practically identical. Yet she'd come lurching in to spend 45 minutes on the crapper. And when she was done, it was always a mess. My mother referred to said mess as green apple splatters. Don't is what that means. I really don't want to explain it. When confronted about why she wasn't just using the bathroom on her floor, Winnie tried to say that the upstairs bathroom was nicer, even though it was pretty much no different. The building was old, and all the bathrooms looked right out of the 80s. Winnie's next excuse for using the upstairs bathroom was that fewer people went in it. Not true, there were just as many employees on both floor offices. The only real difference is that the lower bathroom was also sometimes used by warehouse employees. But they had their own bathroom too. So honestly, everyone thought Winnie just liked doing it because she knew it got on their nerves. And if she didn't splatter the bathroom on her own floor, then her coworkers from there wouldn't bug her about it. I remember hearing from my mother that her and some other employees went out of their way to clean the bathroom Winnie splattered during their breaks just to have some peace of mind. Everyone wanted Winnie gone, but they couldn't get rid of her. She was trusted with a job in the financial department, and she made sure that no one else knew how to do her part of it. She was so brazen that she acted like she had tenure or something. She even threatened to tell company secrets if she was ever fired. So no one would have put possible sabotage past her. It was also no secret that she and my mother hated each other, and generally avoided one another like the plague since my mother was one of the only people Winnie couldn't bully in the office. Thankfully, new systems and new bosses eventually made Winnie's job obsolete. Her old methods of keeping herself employed there were no longer cutting it. She no longer held major company secrets as she wasn't trusted with any new ones. And she was slowly removed from her job in finances and anything else that could have made her privy to knowledge she could have used for leverage. Then pretty much just left her doing spreadsheets on Windows 98 and other menial tasks. Winnie wasn't fired per se, but she was made to resign, though not without acting like she was the most important person there before clearing out her desk full of Little Debbie snack cakes and hidden weapons. She legit kept a small crossbow on her file cabinet. Once when my mother brought my sister and I into the office on a Saturday, I found Winnie's crossbow and put a pin in it for fun and fired. The pin hit a window and was just gone. Might have even gone through it. Those windows were full of cracks that were covered in box tape. I put the crossbow back and pretended nothing ever happened. As soon as Winnie was gone, the entire office was so happy that it might as well have been that scene from the second Ace Ventura movie where all the monks partied when he left. And before long, she was forgotten. But her green apple splatters were still infamous in the office for years after.